Welcome to the History Makers, the show that brings you top personalities, great people who are making strides in their endeavors, music, entertainment, art, theater, fashion. And today I'm privileged to host one of the ladies who have done one of the biggest books, the fastest selling book in Kenya today, Debora Tendo. Karibu, Debora.
Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Tell me the journey of writing this book, Rough Silk.
Rough silk. So, this is a memoir.
Yes.
It's a biography. It's basically, as it suggests,
Yes.
on the cover, the incredible story of a dad and daughter. So this is me writing about my father because we were raised by a single dad. And so the journey of writing this book is, the background is that my dad died of cancer back in 2016. And I thought that we lived a very incredible life, a very unique life. Most of the time you'll find that it's mothers, it's single mothers and their children, yeah?
Yes.
But in an African setup, to find a single dad
father,
and his children, that was unique in its own way. And so I decided the way to celebrate him is to write a book about him. And it's something that I wanted to do from probably 2016. But the journey of grief was not very easy on me. Anytime I said that I was going to write, it went on to the next year, and the next year, and the next year, until finally, in 2022, my husband really urged me, because he always kept on telling me, you need to write this book, you need to write it while it's still fresh. So in 2022, last year, I started writing in April, and it was quite a painful story that I started writing, and then I stopped. I stopped, I think, for about 2 months. That is, it went all the way May, June. I think I started again in June. I stopped. I went for therapy because writing is like revisiting. Writing a memoir is revisiting. It's opening the wounds. It's grief all over again. The things that you had not thought about, you had not reflected upon, they all come to the surface. And so I went for therapy, and then I went back again and started writing. And so as I continued writing, beautiful memories came. It was not only, I realized it was not only about the sad, the sad parts of life. Beautiful memories came, memories that made me laugh, memories that made me look back in wonder about the sheer beauty of the story. And so I went on and on and on and on until I finally finished in October, I remember. And then now I had to give it to the consultants, And, the moment you give your manuscript, it's like you have delivered a child. And I thought it was over. It was because it had been heavy lifting on my side, writing the book. And so when I gave it out, I was so relieved. I was like, oh, wow, it's over. Now I think I'm going to have a book. Only for the book to come back with so many issues. You need to do this, you need to do that,
chapters,
you need to, and it,
change the
I know.
format.
And so it took me back, to start. And when the book came back, I was like, I can't. It was like starting again. It was like starting the pain again. And I said, no, I can't deal with this. And so November went without me writing. And then December, I was vacationing in Bali. Very beautiful place for writers.
Indonesia.
And yes. So I finished this book in Bali. So I can say I started writing this book in April and I finished it in December.
Last year?
Yeah, last year.
So you say that this is a story of a single dad, an incredible single dad, and you've done a bit of heavy lifting in there. You've done heavy lifting on the 80s and 90s. What would you say are some of the highlights of your writing, and what made you write this book?
Well, first of all, I'm a reader. I'm a very ardent reader. I love books. And I really felt that anytime I go to the autobiography section of books, the only books we get are books to do with politicians, to do with the success story. You know, people who went to Harvard, people who, won the gold, people who became the presidents. And yet, I feel that everybody has a story. And everybody has a story that can impact somebody else. I know you have a story. I've never met anyone and sat with anyone and just asked them randomly, so tell me about you. You'll always find there's a story that is worth people listening to. But a lot of people feel their stories are not worth it because they're not the president, they're not the prime minister, they're not the gold medalist, because out here everybody wants to hear about success. But what about the ordinary? Because not all of us are going to become presidents, not all of us are going to win gold in Olympics, 90% of us are going to lead the ordinary life, trying and failing, So where are the books that have to do with people who tried and failed? People who tried, failed, tried again, and succeeded. So for me, why I'm talking about it's the incredible story of a dad and daughter is being raised by him in the 80s and the 90s. This book starts in a very interesting way. First of all, my dad gets, we start in the rural area in the 50s when he's born. And I discussed the history of the Suba people because he was a Suba guy, and his father took part in the World War, came back to Suba and found that his land had been, they thought he had died, and they subdivided his land. So when he came back, he found there was no land. So he had to move further into Migori to Sori, and while he was moving, his wife was pregnant, Basically, he stayed in Suba for about 7-8 months, trying to tussle with his brothers.
Yes.
And when it was impossible, he decided to just move to Migori. So he's moving with his wife, who is Nyongalo, and then Nyongalo goes in labor at a tree called the Otho. When you look at this cover, you'll see a tree.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that is where the story begins. So his mother gives birth to him and dies. And this also takes care of the issue of the mortality rate and what it means, what childbirth means. So this is how the story begins. And so it's a very interesting story. From the word go, it starts on 100 kilometers per hour.
It's on the footing is crazy.
It's crazy.
You are from India, you're from Burma.
Yeah.
You are in a world war.
Yes.
You come home, you find a land taken, their wife delivers, but she dies on the spot.
Yeah, she dies on the spot.
So you have a baby here in your hands.
Yes.
Are you sure you get land or not?
Yeah, so now they had a few cousins who were living in the Sori area, and of course they just gave him a portion. So this kid who is born is my dad now. So my dad was the last born to his mother because the mother died while having him. And so of course he goes to school, he goes to Homa Bay High School. He's a striker, he's at Homa Bay High School, plays football and all that. Then eventually, after finishing high school. In the 60s, when you finish high school, university was not such a big deal. You just took a bus and, came to Nairobi and started to look for a job.
Yeah.
So now this is what happens. When my dad is still in high school, two girls are betrothed to him. And so he marries.
The Luos of 80s used to marry in high school.
Can you believe that?
And even some Tesos I know used to, when you're going to high school, you leave your wife at home.
Imagine, so this guy is 16 years old.
Yes.
He already has 2 wives, And these 2 wives already having children, you know?
When you go to high school, you're a big man.
You're a big
get
man,
married.
you get married.
Yes.
So when he finishes high school, he already has a family,
Yes.
And so he arrives in Nairobi and he now realizes, oh my God.
There are beautiful women out here.
Oh my God, what's happening here? So
when the village, he had not seen women who had makeup and all this.
Yes.
And lipstick.
Yes.
He's shocked.
He's shocked. They're now going for Rumba. He's introduced into the Nairobi nightlife and whatnot. And he now meets my mother.
Yes.
And in Nairobi, it's unheard of. What are you talking about? You're only 20-something. What do you mean you have wives at home? So he doesn't tell my mother that.
I have wives.
He has 2 wives at home. So they're dating and everything, and they get married in church.
Oh.
Yeah. They get married. What is the name of this church? It's at Jogo Road. It's called
St.
what?
Stephen's.
No, it's not St. Stephen's. It was a Catholic church. It's a Catholic church. Is it Our Lady of Visitation? Something like that in Jogo Road. They get married, and then eventually the truth starts coming out,
That this man is married.
Yes, the truth
Amacha bibi nyumbani mbili.
The truth starts coming out, and when the truth is coming out, my mother has already had like my children. He's had now my brother. I mean, she has had my brother, and the marriage now starts taking a dip. Of course, because he has come to Nairobi, he now knows about rumba. He's drinking. He has this groupie friends and whatnot. These are things that are not conducive to marriage, and so his marriage breaks apart. When his marriage breaks apart, that is now how he becomes a single dad. This is how this book starts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've really explained the background, the genesis of all this. But there's also a number of, in the 80s, there's a lot of rumba. There's a lot of sex in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
A lot of sex.
Yeah.
And that's the birth of HIV/AIDS.
Oh my God,
Serious
yes.
ravaging people.
Yes.
And there's one of the greatest Luo musicians, Okach Bigi, Jaujimbe. So how did all that play into his life?
It's interesting, Charles, because I have dedicated a whole chapter on the boys' club and another chapter on the pandemic. I think as a community, as Luos, we don't speak as loudly to do with the pandemic, the HIV pandemic, and what it did to the community. For us, the kids who are born in the 80s, everybody, every single one of us has a story to do with HIV. Because I think HIV came into Kenya, we were very young. I think it was towards mid-80s to late 80s. And then now the effects started coming up in the 90s now. Now, my dad, because he was a guy in the 80s, and I've told you about the rumba, there was also Okach Bigi. There was this club in Kisumu. I think it was called the Junction.
Junction Inn.
And my dad had this group of friends, Odiek. I don't know whether you ever heard of that guy.
Odiek Songa would Salome. Songi would Salome.
Yes.
The man who would eat 2 chicken alone. The man who would drink 2 big sodas, 2 1 liters. And by the way, the story is, there's a friend of mine called Dod Kenyatta. Dod Kenyatta is an ardent Gor Mahia fan.
Okay.
He tells me that the late Odiek Songa was a heavy man. He was heavily built.
He was really huge, yes.
And he could dance. He really loved his dancing. And when Odiek would, at every 10 o'clock, he would order for his food ready for preparation. So at 11, he's eating his lunch. So he's had 2 chicken, 2 sodas. And if you try and get a bite, he tells you, go and look for your money.
Your own money.
Go and make your money. If you don't have money, you cannot eat Odiek Songa's food.
Yeah, that is true. He had
Songi.
a lot of money.
Yes.
I think he was a Kanu stalwart.
Yes,
which
he's
was
a
very
Moi
rare.
man.
Yeah,
Yes.
it
was a
it
Moi
was
man.
very, very rare.
Yeah.
And Odiek Songa had a Peugeot 504, which
Yes.
was a big deal those days.
Yes.
So my dad and his group, they used to drive in this Peugeot 504 every Friday.
Yes.
They're driving
Junction Inn.
Yeah, they're driving to Junction Inn.
Yes.
They're going to dance to Okach Bigi, and the next morning they're coming back to Nairobi.
Yes.
So this lifestyle, of first of all, there was the road carnage. A lot of them died on the highway.
Lots of people died.
A lot of them died on the highway. I think in Lowland we call it Luothum.
Yes.
A lot of them died while doing that.
Yes.
And then now this lifestyle, there's definitely as Luos, we are lifeists, you know, and there's music, there is sex, and there was a lot of HIV moving around in these clubs, a lot of it. And there's a famous one here at Safe in Nairobi. It was called Safe
House.
Safe House.
Yeah.
I think it was in
towards
Huruma.
Kariobangi,
It was in Huruma.
Yeah.
And when Okach wasn't playing in Junction, he was playing at Safe House.
Yes.
Still the same thing. Lots of Luos in there, just dancing, a lot of reckless sexual behavior. And so when now we started looking at the 90s, 93, coming up, HIV now started getting into the community. A lot of people died.
Many people died.
A lot of people died. As children who were born in the 80s, a lot of us were left
as orphans.
And we don't talk about that because these kids were not able to go to school. A lot of them were distributed to relatives. You know, like when a mother dies, a father dies, if they were polygamists, the whole setup, all the 5 mothers die, and there's just nobody. So the homestead remains on its own, and children now have to be distributed. A lot of kids are not able to go to school. A lot of them, it was bad. So this affected the community, and it's something that needs to be talked about a lot. Secondly, HIV got into even the universities, because when you go to Okachbigi and Safe Life, it's everybody. We have the mechanics there. We have the professors. We have the doctors. We have all sorts of people. And when this disease is moving, you know, in the club, it's taking everybody in. And we had professors, of course, who are having affairs with students in the university. So they gave the students now gave each other, so it was really, really bad. I think in the 90s, anytime you're on the highway, it was just coffins moving into Nyanza, coffins moving into Nyanza, and we thank God the ARVs came to our rescue towards the end of the 90s, and I think that is something that needs to be talked about, and I've spoken about it a lot
in a chapter.
Yes,
the
I've
chapter
given
on
it
pandemic,
a whole chapter written
and the boys
pandemic.
club. And I think Okachbigi single-handedly, as a musician, he's the only artist I know who, for a very long time, Carnival was not hosting traditional local artists. So one day they heard that Okachbigi always pulls a crowd, and the first person to ever, for the first time, he was called to perform in Carnival.
Really?
And he was packed.
Really?
So Okachbigi was a phenomenon, a major phenomenon in Luo culture and music.
Yes.
And remember, he also died with a disease.
Oh yeah, he did. I've actually written about it here.
Yes.
He came on stage, he was standing. Then eventually he came on stage sitting.
Yes.
Then eventually he was coughing.
Yeah.
Eventually his voice just
disappeared.
And he even composed a song.
Yes, about
There's
it.
a song about it.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So if you look at, you tackled about pandemic, you tackled about the traveling. What about Gor Mahia, the issues of Gor Mahia? Did you touch about Gor Mahia?
Of course. So when you're talking about Okachbigi and our fathers, it's a package. Gor Mahia is a package. It's in there.
Yes.
And I personally am a huge fan of Gor Mahia, and a lot of us, we have inherited Gor Mahia from our parents. When this book starts, I talk about the things that were so special to my father. One of them is rumba. Another one is football. And of course, we could not afford a television. And so we used to listen to football on a radio.
Commentary.
Yeah, on the commentary.
Yes.
It was interesting. It was interesting now that I think about it. And so Gor Mahia then used to play, I think, at the City Stadium, if I recall.
They call it Toko Mwanda.
Yes, Toko Mwanda. And we were living in Umoja. And so they would pick themselves. They would actually come home, pick up Dad, and they would go to Bama. They used to start, it was a package.
Yes, you have to eat at Bama first.
you start by...
What I've not understood is that you have to eat uji and mandazi.
Why?
Surely.
No, it's because after that you're expecting to run. Anything may happen. Anything may happen.
Yeah.
So they're going to go to cities, to Bama, they're going to eat.
Yes.
After that, they get into the stadium.
Yeah.
That is when they were watching the live. I never once went for the live ones when I was a child, but I used to listen to it on the radio with him. But I know that they used to go and they would come back without shoes. You know, and I would wonder, why are you guys coming back without shoes? It's usually always because sometimes Gor is being defeated by the other
AFC Leopards.
by AFC Leopards. This guy called Odero Spoiler, he used to just get into the pitch,
yes,
and starts accosting the referee. And the next thing you know, there's stones inside the stadium, and
yes,
people are running. And
helter skelter.
Most of their live matches never used to end. It used to end in running battles.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've really touched
You've
on Gor Mahia.
that.
I've tackled Gor Mahia from the days of my dad
yes,
to the days of Carol Radul and Gidi when they were doing the Jazza study program, to Sports Pesa coming into the league, to now where we are right now, where fans are again disillusioned because management issues in local football. Yeah. I've tackled
You've really tackled Gor at length.
Yes.
Then I can see a chapter you've tackled your journey, your personal journey. Your struggles in school, and your struggles in identity, and also towards the end you really tackle your father's illness and why, and the closeness you have with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, when the marriage disintegrates, he remains as the only parent. And for children, we only remember the present parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he loses his job. This reckless behavior, this going out to the club, having fun and whatnot, it doesn't end well for him, as it never ends well for everybody. And so, of course, we are the people who suffer these decisions. So what happened is when their marriage ended, they were fighting for us as the children. So my mother would send her sister, Mama Mpenzi.
Yes.
Is really covered in this book.
In this book, I've seen the photos.
She's a hero. So Mama Mpenzi would come and steal us, and we would be hidden out. And little by little, like a month or 2 months later, you'll find Dad has found out where we've been hidden out. He would come again and steal us, So we would be stolen. One moment we're with Mama Mpenzi, the next we're with Dad and all that, until it reached a point when everybody said, no, let these kids go to boarding. Yeah. And so actually I never went to primary or nursery. I never went to nursery or pre-unit because of this issue. Because when you're hidden out, you can't go to school, So I have written a very hilarious episode here, how I went to class 1. Mama Mpenzi just came home one day and found me playing by myself and asked me where the other children are. And I told her that everybody's in school. all my age mates are in school. Then it occurs to her, oh my God, she needs to go to school. Decides to take me to St. Anne's in Jogo Road, St. Anne's Girls Primary. So we reach there, we find the headmistress, who is shocked, like, what? This kid has never gone to school, not even nursery, nothing, And she was about to reject me. But she didn't know that I had been learning from these other children when they come from school how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, how to do the ABCD, FGH. And so when I saw that she was going to reject me, I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ABCD. I started singing to her. Hello, teacher. I'm so happy to see you. She felt so, it was so heartfelt that she said, okay, let's have her. If she's not strong, she's going to just repeat class 1 until the day she'll catch up with everybody else.
Yes.
Luckily, I've never repeated a class. So anyway, I went to boarding school. I went to Mukumu Girls Primary Boarding School. That's now how I interact with Odieksonga. Mukumu Girls Primary School is in Kakamega. So for you to reach Kakamega, you have to pass by Kisumu. So we hiked Odieksonga's car.
Vehicle, the Peugeot.
Yeah, they were going to see, what's his name, Okachbigi, but they had to take me to school, to Mukumu, to do the interview, and then now they came back to Kisumu to dance. So I spent a whole journey with these guys, Odeksonga, Abongo Jakuyugi, Nyamson area, all these guys. I spent, like, they're the ones who took me for this. So I went to Mukumu Girls Primary, of course, and Dad was struggling. He didn't have a job and all that. I struggled through primary. Luckily enough, it was a Catholic school, and they're not as brutal as to, tell kids to go back home because of school fees. So they always just endured me, and it also helped that I was always top in class. So it was so bad that there were some closing days when I never went home. People close school.
Lack of money.
Yeah. Lack of basic things like just transport, So kids are taken on closing day. I have to remain in school because nobody has come to pick me, and I have to live with the nuns. I'm very close to those nuns. Yeah, so I struggled through primary school. My mother never showed up, I think when the marriage disintegrated, she was really traumatized with everything that happened. The details of it is in the book. I don't want to tell the public so that they can buy the book, find out what actually, what scarred her that much that she just forgot about the children, It's in the book. So I struggled through primary until I finished. And I was so lucky when I sat my KCPE. I was called to both Alliance High School and Moi Girls High School Eldoret. It was quite something. It was quite something. When those calling letters came, my dad could not believe it with everything that I had gone through as a child. Yeah, but it was a moment also of it was a scary moment because if we're struggling with school fees like 5,000, 6,000, if you're struggling even with fare, how are you going to afford going to Alliance or going to Moi Girls High School? It was, and I immediately realized that I don't think we're going to make it here. And the lucky thing is when I was leaving Mukumu Girls Primary, then the headmistress, the nun, she was called Sister Joycelyn Mukolwe. She told me, you go, and then when it's difficult to go to high school, come back. We'll take you to Mukumu Girls High School, and we'll just sponsor you fully. I was always top 3. They knew I was going to pass the exam. So now we reached a point where I'm looking at Alliance and Moi Girls. And Kibaki had not yet been president, so there was still no subsidized high school fees.
No free.
There was no free education. Let me tell you, those schools were expensive. They were really expensive that if you didn't come from a rich family, it was difficult for you to get into those schools. And so I told my dad, I don't think we are going to make it here. I think let's take the option of Mukumu Girls Primary. Do you know what my dad did? He walked with my calling letter in the streets of Nairobi.
Bunge la Mwananchi.
It's called City Hall.
Yes, where those Luos sitting.
Ambassador, there was ambassador.
They always sit around ambassador. They converge. Many people.
They were always talking about Raila. Every day when they were speaking about Raila, about Ford, about all these things, at the end of these discussions, he used to pass this calling letter telling them, you guys, my kid has been called to a national school. Please help me.
Yes.
And people kept on, changaing for him and whatnot, until eventually we realized I could not go to Alliance. Alliance was probably more expensive by around 80,000, if I remember. And so I ended up going to Moi Girls High School, Eldoret. Yeah. So it's interesting, actually, that I was the first person in my family to ever step into a national school. And this was being told to everybody. And at that point, my mother appeared. I had not seen her for such a long time. She appeared and she offered to take me to high school. And unfortunately, I was already getting into my teens. And I had a lot of questions. I was growing up.
You're asking, where have you been?
Yeah.
Where are you appearing now?
Yeah.
Where have you left us?
Yeah.
Many questions.
Many questions.
Yeah.
It was a very polarized relationship. it was a very hurtful relationship. We struggled. We really struggled. We really struggled to the point that when he left my girls, after admitting me, when he left my girls, he never came back again. Never. Because I asked her a question that was painful for her. It's in the book, you know, and she never came back. Yeah, she never came back. And I really struggled with identity all through high school. And you know, the interesting thing is, from the time that our mother left to now high school, my dad remarried. He married this very, very wonderful lady. In this book, I describe her as Nyasamia. She was amazing. She really took care of us. She really took care of us. And when she went, actually, that is when our life became so bad that we were auctioned. We went to live in a slum. And that is when even dad would not even pick me from school, because where am I going to? You know, it was probably his way of protecting me. And so I was talking about now my mom, when now she came back, how the relationship was really polarizing for both of us, and she never came back. So of course I was struggling with identity all of high school. I was a very problematic child, and I have really heartfelt given teachers, my teachers. I've given my teachers a lot of praise for being the people who really, really, really stood by me. One, Mr. Bet, he really, 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 he kept on counseling me, you know, kept on counseling me about the problems that I was going through, asking myself why our mother, you know, left. Weren't we worth it? You know, all those kind of things. You struggle with them as a child.
So you've tackled about your mother's death and how you dealt with it, and also your dad's diagnosis of cancer, and your journey with your dad when he was sick, and the tussle over the barrio. You know, Luos, when you're married here and another man marries you, there's a lot of problem there.
Yeah, so as I've said, when our mother disappeared, when I was probably around, I was in Form 4, I remember. I had a suspension from school, and I was supposed to go to Nairobi, but the moment I reached the stage, something just told me, go to Homa Bay. I had heard she was working at Homa Bay. So I decided to take a bus and went to Homa Bay. So it was my first time to see her in a long time, and I think the moment I saw her, I understood why. She had caught the virus, of course, and oh my God, it was the HIV of the 90s, that one that, you know, those diagrams that used to be drawn.
Yes.
You know, she was there, she was right in there. She was extremely, extremely sick, you know, she was really extremely sick, and she didn't stay much longer. Yeah, she died, which was really painful because I think when I went to see her, I was in a conciliatory mood.
Yeah.
I had now grown up a little bit, and I wanted to understand why she did what she did. Why are we here? You know, and we could not really explore all that because of how sick she was. And you know, before my mother dies, in this book turns just before she dies. There's a revelation she makes to me that is very, very, it's very, very important in this book, because in every piece of literature you have that point where somebody puts the book down.
The turning point.
Yeah, the turning point. There's something she tells me about myself, you know, and it's the turning point of this book. Everybody usually reaches that place and says, oh my God, you know, and then she dies having told me something. Well, I finish high school, I go to university, and because we are really struggling, while I'm in college, I really do a lot of hustling. I am in the theater, you know, I'm acting, I'm selling beer at rugby sevens, I am doing promotions in supermarkets. I'm doing everything basically to be able to survive, you know. And eventually I get a good job. You know, I get my first job at Wells Fargo in the legal department because of my legal studies, yeah. And now...
You studied law,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So things now are getting better. Life is good. Dad is doing tenders. Dad got a good job with a great law firm in Nairobi. And so things are looking good. You know, we are getting things back on track. People are going to school. We can afford meals and all that. So when everything is now looking good, Dad starts getting sick. He's always sickly. His tummy has a problem. You know, we take him for so many tests, and they're always saying he's got what is it called? He's got ulcers. So we start treating ulcers. We treat ulcers for almost a year. And he's just going down, he's going down, he's going down until we realize, no, let's just do a comprehensive, comprehensive check. That's when he's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Yeah.
That was a thunderbolt to you.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was crazy. It was crazy because we are like, what? From 0 to stage 4, how? You know, so all this time we had been treating treating ulcers. We should have probably started on cancer. So we all go hard as kids. We are about 11 children from his marriage before my mother, then myself, and then 3 other wives after my mother. So we are 11 kids. So we come together, we start fundraising. I want to say my social media page, they're the ones who bought this book so much. They were there when it happened, and they really did fundraising for me, a lot of it. And so we decided to take Dad to India. I have really spoken about medical tourism in this book because our health standards in this country, somehow, we always have to end up in India if you have some little money. And if you don't, you just have to deal with it. I have a sister who I have dedicated also this book to, called Lillian, who died of blood cancer. And Lillian went through the Kenyan system of treating cancer. And so when Dad, and she died eventually. So when Dad was diagnosed, we knew we are not going through the Kenyan system. So we had to take him to India to just give him a chance. And so I've talked about India here. I've spoken about medical tourism, what it means to travel with a patient in India. And for me, it was so special because anytime you look at medical tourism, for men, it's always their wives taking them or their sons. On this, it was me and him. You know, it was a daughter
And a
a father. You know, and it comes all the way from when I was a child, you know, and he was taking care of me as a single dad, to me now growing up and taking care of him. So we went to India. He did his chemos. We lived together. We ran short of money. We moved from a posh area now to the, you know, to not really a slum, but a lower middle class area in India. And basically all that until we finished his chemos. While I was in India, I met the ambassador for Kenya there. I met Janet Kanini, who also was actually she was in India at the same time. She had lung cancer, if I remember. Yeah, so I've really spoken about India. Anyone who's interested in going to India, or anyone who has gone to India because of a sick person, will really, really relate to this book. The challenges, you know, all that. I've spoken about it. Anyway, eventually we finished chemo. He was declared cancer-free, just as Janet Kanini, and we came back home. So when he came back home, he contracted an infection, a chest infection, which became so difficult to deal with, and eventually he passed on. Yeah, after all that. Yeah, so that is where the book ends, where now he dies, and then I speak on 2 funerals in this book, the funeral of my mother and the funeral of my dad, in very gory details about our culture as Luos. with funerals, where we have commercialized funerals to the point when you're sick, very few people are going to come to your aid with money. But the moment you die,
everyone comes.
Millions. People are going, because guys want to eat, guys want to dance and all that. I've spoken about Luo funerals in this book and what it means. Yeah.
So if you look at this book and what all the topics you've covered, why did you decide on Rough Silk as a title?
Oh, okay. So Rough Silk. Everybody asks that question. First of all, this book is black. This book is black because I feel there's a lot of growth in darkness. You know? There's a lot of growth in darkness. People think that there's a lot of growth in light. But the truth of the matter is when going through your darkest moments, your blackest moments, that is when you grow. That is when you get to, that is when you're alone, actually.
That's when you reflect.
That is when you reflect. That is when you're, that's why this book, everybody, why is this book black? You know, why is this? It's black because the most growth for any human being will come from darkness. That's number one. So number two, rough silk. Silk as a fabric is very soft. And it is very valuable, you know? So what somebody would expect is as soft as silk. But here we have rough silk. Why do we have rough silk? Is because anybody's life, their highs and their lows. Their smooth spaces and their rough spaces. Rough silk just describes what a life is. Rough silk talks just about what a life is. You're going to laugh and you're going to cry. There's a lot of laughing in this book. There's a lot of crying in this book. A lot of, you know, winning moments. Like now when I'm called to national schools, and that's a win. And there are moments that are really, really sad, like the death of my mother, eventually the death of my dad, and all that. So rough silk is an antithesis of itself. You know, it's an oxymoron. Yeah, so you have silk, but it's rough. So you're getting both sides of it. Yeah.
So the launch, you did it at Pan-Afric. Many people came. How many copies did you sell?
At Pan-Afric, I sold 1,000 copies. It's so funny, actually. We changed venues thrice because I actually thought the people who would attend my launch would be 50 people, and that is what I had budgeted for. And I had just chosen a very small space. And when I announced that I've written a book and I'm launching it, I think within the first 30 minutes, about 200 tickets were gone.
How much was a ticket?
A ticket was 1,800. It was just the book.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just you buy the book, and that was it. So about 100 books were already gone, and then we realized, oh my God, we have a problem. So we had to change the venue from 50 to 100. A second venue. We looked at 200 possibly, and by probably in 2 or 3 or 4 hours, 200 whatever copies were already gone, and now we had to now change to Pan-Afric, which. It's a very special place. They're able to open different halls so that you have a hall. It's not just one space. They're able to open. So, and they told us also, oh my God, we cannot go anything above 350, you know. And so we had to say, the moment we reached 350, we had to tell people, it's sold out, it's sold out. You know, it's sold out, but you can still get a book. And so outside those 350 people, now people continued buying until, we reached.
Why do you think it was books Kenyans don't read? Why do you think there's a lot of interest in the book?
I think that would be nice to ask the people who bought the book. But
because Kenyans, I know, the only place in 1982, which was not raided, was a bookshop.
No.
Yes, it's true.
Are you kidding me?
In 1982, the only place there's no Kenyan who looted is the bookshop.
Oh my God. You know what? I have talked about the culture of reading in this book for Kenyans. And I have said that I never once saw my dad read a book, you know?
Kenyans don't read.
Yeah, I never once saw my dad read a book. And so we are the generation that is changing all that. Not only are we reading books, we are writing books, you know. And I attributed part of why Kenyans don't read books is that there are no, okay, the books that were out here before didn't have anything to do with us. You see, like, every literary space in Kenya had to come from school. And you see, our dads did Romeo and Juliet, they did, is it A Tale of Two Cities? You know, stories that they can't relate to, you know, until recently now we brought in now the African writers, and literature started becoming interesting. Now when we have Margaret Ogola, we have Things Fall Apart, you know, literature started becoming interesting. You know, whenever we write our own stories, people become interested in books. I think one of the reasons why this book has really sold, it's a Kenyan story, number one. Number two, it's the story of an ordinary guy.
Kenyan.
It could be you or me. You know, just the way I started by saying that all biographies out here are about presidents, politicians, the gold medalists. There is no if they're very few, about normal people going through normal Kenyan challenges, trying and failing, trying and trying, failing and failing. So I think one of the reasons people bought this book, it's a Kenyan story. The second reason is it's an ordinary Kenyan's story. And then I think I've also built a niche on social media as a storyteller. I do take my time to write stories about people, about ordinary people. And so the first buyers of this book actually came from my social media space. And I think from now, everybody else gaining an interest, they're like, wow, okay, this is a good writer. Let's see what she has to say. Yeah.
Okay. So John C.B. Okumu, the legendary thespian.
Oh, he's a star.
The legendary news
He's
reader,
amazing.
the
Yes.
TV host.
Yes.
And the teacher.
Yes, Mwalimu, yes.
How did you get him to be the MC of this function?
Actually, he was not an MC. He interviewed me. We wanted to
On the set.
Yeah, we wanted to change things a little bit. So most launches in Kenya are all about, okay, so I have written this book that I'm launching. Then you have people coming up with speeches. Yes, I know Charles because we went to school together, and I think this is going to be a good story. I know Charles because You know, it's always somebody coming up with a speech about you. We wanted to change it a little bit. We wanted it to be an interview, him asking me questions, because he's the first person. He was the first person to actually read this book. John C.B. had never heard about me, you know?
Yes.
And when we told him about this book, he was like, okay, so who's Debora? And then I told him, read the book. Read the book and tell me if you do not want to be a part of this, you know? He's a great guy. He's a reader. Thankfully, he took the book. Yeah, he is a reader. He's also an author, you know?
Yeah, he's a Nairobi guy.
Yeah, so he took the book and he read it. When he read it, he said, yes. Yes. What he said was, and it has stayed with me, is that this is a new genre of autobiography. In my career, I have never read a memoir like this. The sheer truth and rawness and, you know, just being real about this book is what made him accept to come and interview me. Yeah. But it was really, really an honor to have him there.
So do we look forward for many other books in future? What is your plan from here? Will you go back to law school, finish your law school? Are you just back now in Wells Fargo as a...
Wow. So that's the thing. You see, this book, it's about my dad. It's mostly about my dad. But there's a whole story about me that has not yet come out. So when you look at this book, how it ends, it ends by, do you have enough time for me to read a sentence?
Yes, read a sentence.
Okay. So if you look at page 275, 275, I've written Grief, the sequel. So this is how it goes. I woke up from the adjusted seat of my car where I had retreated and momentarily had no idea why I was waking up from a car seat. I peered outside my car window curiously. I saw that I was in the village in our compound. No sign of anybody. Only empty bottles of Jack Daniels, cans of beer and paper plates. Water and soda bottles were on the ground. And it started to come to me. Sleeping dogs lay exhausted from the previous day's feast and night mayhem. This is after burying my dad, yeah? Adjacent to me was Sibor, Dad's car, where I could see Philip's legs on the windscreen from the inside, where he also probably retired to. I turned my head slowly to the right, and my eyes caught it. Behind Mikai's house, the oval mound of fresh soil rising up cruelly from the ground, and my mouth was suddenly dry with fear. I rested my head back to the car seat and closed my eyes. Tears ran from my eyes into my ears. There was salt in my gums and acid in my stomach. My whole body was swollen in a sob. I was witnessing my own death. Grief stood up from the chair in which it had been sitting silently, observing proceedings for the last 2 weeks, and ushered me across the fence where I followed dutifully. This is me waking up after burying my dad.
Yes.
And the book ends there. So a book can come out to do with grief because everybody asks, so after your dad, how did you deal, for these 6 years before you wrote this book, how have you dealt with this grief? It could be about grief, it could be about me, yeah.
And you've conquered the grief.
Yeah.
Finally in this book.
Oh my God, if I can sit with you for 40 minutes
Yes.
and discuss my dad, of course I've struggled a bit. There was a point where I was almost...
Yes, I could say.
Yeah, I've really had to compose myself not to cry. But if I can do a whole 40 minutes without crying, I think I'm in a good trajectory.
In a good space.
Yes, I'm in a good space.
I think you've done a good job.
Thank
the
you.
writing is top notch.
Thank you.
And the storytelling is there.
Thank you.
I think you're doing a wonderful job. Keep doing it.
Thank you.
And I think you've written so many things about, I can see the Macbeth inside there.
Oh yeah, there's Macbeth. I'm a Shakespearean. I love Shakespeare.
Yeah,
and you learn why I love Shakespeare. There was a time, do you know, in the 80s and in the 90s, we had the Kenya National Library Service that would bring a van to the estates and would give children books for free. Do you know that I was a beneficiary of that?
No.
So that is when I interacted with Shakespeare, and that is when I started loving books. When you come from a poor background, you don't have TV, you don't have radio, it's books.
There's a quote from that Macbeth. It says that it says you never find the art, you don't find the art, the mind construction of the face. I've forgotten it. It's a very nice one in Macbeth. And then I've seen you talked of Meja Mwangi. I love Meja Mwangi.
Yeah, he was
Meja
amazing.
Mwangi is I call him, Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a rural writer.
Yeah.
Meja Mwangi is a town writer.
He's an amazing guy.
He's amazing.
Yeah, amazing guy.
The
Amazing
setup
guy.
for his books are crazy.
Amazing.
Going down River Road.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
So thank you, Deborah. I think you've done a good job. We end it there, but to everyone who wants to catch, how much is this book?
So as you see, this is a hardcover. I went all the way.
Yes.
It is very rare to find hardcover books from a first-time author. This means I put in a lot of money. We put in a lot of money in the book. So we have hardcover going for 2,350, and then we have the paperback going for 1,800. So all of them can be found on Nuria and Cheche. Those are bookstores in Nairobi. Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah.
I have a last message for Kenyans.
Yes.
Read Kenyan authors. Please, please, please give us a chance. It's not always West Africa. You know, it's West Africa. It's foreigners. Read Kenyan authors. Read Kenyan books. Books that have stories that look like us. That's very important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And you've heard it from Debora Tendo, the author of Rough Silk, and she's taken us through the journey of writing, the journey of her personal struggles, personal triumphs, personal successes, and failures in between, death, sorrow, and happiness. Keep watching. This is the History Makers.